EMC2. He said, look, I always panic when I see a Roach push. How can I do better against this, basically? And looking at the Zerg's build order, we already gonna think about what are we facing. So it's a pool gas opening. There's no hatchery down yet. I believe this was a Gold League replay. The probe comes in and is sitting in the danger zone right there, by the way. That's like absolute danger zone. I was like, at any moment those drones are gonna kill that. And it's gonna be a Zergling speed, a hatchery goes down. So this is not looking, and then a Roach one in a very fast second gas and a double Evo chamber. So not very efficient play from Magno. A double Evo this early is insanely inefficient. Let's see, he's gonna be going for double Roach upgrades off the bat. So this is such a low economy that these upgrades don't make a lot of sense. He's gonna, let's just fast forward and get to that point where the Roach rush actually happens. So we see some Roaches coming. See a ton of shield batteries and adepts going down, Immortal's trying to be built. And EMC2 is in full panic mode right now. He's like, ah, God, there's so much stuff coming. Building a Forge and a Twilight behind this. There's 2 more gateways there. The units are all very far back right now. I guess they're afraid of kind of going out to fight this, but yeah. Ooh, eats a few corrosive vials. Shield battery Immortal should never die to this though. And we can see the money floating to both sides. Definitely, that depowered as well. It does end up holding this. But did panic a little bit. Okay. So this is awesome. This is really awesome, guys, because this actually tells us... Ah, what the frack? My music was on in game? Sorry, guys. I was wondering why the audio sounded so terrible. Just so you know, while I did defend the push, I completely stopped spending my money, says EMC2. Yep. And your opponent's push actually was so sloppy, this should have been super easy, EMC2. So we're going to do a few things. First of all, looking at your opening build order, this pylon went down really late, okay? Now this is such a fundamental thing, but guys, the first part of the game, you've got to be so tight. You've got to be so tight. So, did rally the first probe down, but didn't put the pylon down. Where's the pylon? It's got to go down. There we go. Okay. Actually, that wasn't too late. That wasn't too late. Sorry, I thought that went down later than that. That's all right. That's not too bad. It's going to hang around and then put the gateway down, I think. Let's see. Pulls that probe back and then sends another probe down. Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. No. Opening's fine. Chrono boosts. Puts down a gas. Yeah, tight opening. This is fine. This is fine. So no massive flaws in the opening. He's going to go for the Nexus right on time. Yeah. Has forgotten to build the Cyber Core, though. And is going for the second gas in the pylon. So actually, okay, just as I said it. Uh-oh. Completely forgot the Cyber Core. EMC2. Oh no, he's building a second gateway and now the Cyber Core. So that Cyber Core, guys, for Protoss players is meant to go down at the same time just after the Nexus. So what you're meant to do here is you're meant to only start building the gas in the second pylon after that. And this is such a common mistake amongst Protoss players. And they always say, oh yeah, I know I'm not meant to do that. But it happens way too much. This second gas actually went down even before the Nexus as well, which is a mistake. So it's meant to be Nexus, Cyber Core, and then restart probe production. So we're building too many probes here. Then you build it, so you restart probe production, you build a second gas 21, second pylon 22, and your opening is so much smoother. If you don't do it that way, it actually really hurts you as a Protoss player. Makes defending a lot of rushes much harder. So getting that down is huge. We see here, you know, feeling threatened, feeling like you have to build a Zealot. Now, if that core was done earlier, we could have just gone straight for an Adept and got some information a lot earlier. And because EMC2 lost the first probe as well, left it just lying in the mineral line, what should we have done? Hidden that at the third? EMC2 is like in panic mode right now. It's like, oh crap, was there an expand? Comes across, says, okay, there is an expand, but is gonna lose that probe and still isn't 100% sure of what's going on. Now, these two Adepts decide, okay, we're gonna go for a follow-up scout. The big problem here is we're already got Zergling speed finished. It's already like much later than it needs to be. So remember in my game before, essentially it was the same sort of opening, but I was scouting in here at 3 minutes, 50 seconds earlier. And that makes a big difference because if that scouting was able to already be happening, we'd already be seeing, okay, there's not many drones there. You'd maybe go for another shade and you'd be like, oh, okay. And if you scouted in the main, you know, saw these Roaches earlier, that would be great. But let's just take a look. So the Adepts are going across. We're going Robo after gates, extra pylon, lots of extra pylons. Probe production seems pretty consistent. Now, obviously I'm not sure what the build order plan is here, but Robo is like a very ultra safe kind of straight up way to play. The Adepts are going to try to run out of there. That's a good retreat from them. 2 shield batteries is good, but we already built too many pylons. So this is something EMC2 can work on is, guys, you really want to, rather than be building extra pylons for no reason, you want to try and be really tight with your pylons early. I wouldn't mind if we were 44 out of 60 right now, but 44 out of 70 is just a little bit over the top. And part of the reason for this is you actually want to have more of your pylons at the front as well. So these pylons, it's kind of nice to give you more vision and lots of room to build structures later. But we see these 2 shield batteries get depowered later, and this pylon is only powering 1 gateway in the Robo. So I would have loved to see another pylon tucked up there or there, something like that. Anything like that, just to give you a little bit more power in your wall, as well as extra power on these shield batteries. Now, if you see a few roaches coming, I would say, okay, let's swap to stalkers at this point. You got a few zealots, but most importantly, you would want to be fully walling off if you're really worried about this, if you really want to respect this. So in this particular scenario, it wasn't necessary, but if you were worried about a Ling flood or anything getting in, we'd want that. Now, part of the problem is this wall off. This pylon positioning is really bad because it's so close to the wall off that you can't cut this off with a single structure. You'd actually need to put a building here and a building here. So something you guys want to work on is, if you don't want to have the pylon in the wall, try to make sure you put it back a few spaces. So when you're placing it, the edge of the power fields should just barely touch the edges of where you want to put buildings. If it's too close, it actually screws up your ability to do a second layer of wall, and you guys have seen me die to a ton of all-ins when I make that mistake myself. Now behind this, basically just building more units is totally fine. If we were just kind of making more stalkers, pulling our units behind our wall, that would be great. I wouldn't bother with sentries unless you're super worried. I'd focus more around raw fighting power. And there's like an observer on the way right now, but I'd focus on just raw immortals here. Now we see there's a ton of minerals, right? Let's assume this is a big, scary all-in attack. We should have gone, okay, next time we spot the attack, 4 minutes 30. What you want to do is you want to say, what do I need to do next time I'm in this scenario? You want to write down a reaction list. So I would actually open up a document, or I'd write it on a notepad, and I would write, dot point, number 1, build extra pylons, reinforcing my wall. I always build extra pylons whenever I see a push coming, because I know my pylons are going to get focused down, and I know I'm going to be so focused on building units that, number 2, build stalkers, immortals, even adepts or zealots is okay, but mostly stalkers or immortals if it's roaches you're dealing with, okay? So number 2, pylons, that. Number 3, spend all your money on building a ton of gateways, right? And the worst thing that happens is you invest in a ton of too much production. You've got 8 gateways. It was only a light pressure, but then you've got 8 gateways. You can make a warp prism, chrono boost that out, and you can go do a huge counter push. You can go, okay, I've got an immortal, a warp prism, warp in a ton of stalkers and sentries and just try to kill him. But at least you're spending your money. It gives you a very clean, clear path. So whenever I'm under assault as a Protoss, I always go, bam, drop down an extra 4 gateways or an extra 5 gateways. Just drop down a ton of extra gateways, pylons. If you like the shield batteries, that's okay. You can have that in there as part of the list as well. Squeeze that in wherever you like. I often try to just build a single shield battery and not panic too much, but I think it's good to be extra safe and always build some shield batteries. So that's me just naturally towing the line of greed a little bit. But for you guys, I think it's a good idea. So what we see here is I feel like there was not a lot of organization because we saw more adepts warping in. We also saw sentries. We also saw stalkers. We also saw shield batteries. We also saw an observer. So there wasn't really confidence in this. Try and simplify it down to just make immortals and stalkers, just make pylons, just make shield batteries, just make gateways. And if you can memorize that list, the next time you see those roaches coming across the map, you're actually going to be able to say to yourself, it's like clicking your fingers. Bam, pylons at the front, shield batteries at the front, build some stalkers, chrono boost that immortal, build 4 gateways in the main base. Okay, let's focus on the natural. Losing these gateways, not a problem, really not a problem. But we could have microed a lot better. So this zealot wasn't on the control group, we see, which is fine, but in this case it actually did block that zealot, potentially could have blocked more units. And you did move out to try and engage this, which was great, but we could have already had a second immortal out. This observer didn't really make sense. No reason to have an observer to defend a push, right? Second immortal would have made this really easy. And the other thing is always dodge the corrosive bile. I like moving out into the open so the units all aren't stuck behind each other in the choke. But then we aren't really watching and we sit there and eat a bunch of corrosive biles right on top of the units. Pulling back here was nice and using that shield battery to keep the units alive. But as I said, if we moved out with 2 immortals, dodge the corrosive bile, it would have been such an easy, just clean that up, And then as soon as you clean the push up, like at this point, you want to say, this is not scary. I have more Immortals and Stalkers than you have Ravagers. And what do? You immediately swap into your next phase. So it's either counter attack whenever you deal with a push. So Chrono Booster, Warp Prism, make even more gateways, and just go do a big attack. Or take a third base. Add tech, add upgrades. And you basically just explode into that, and your units will just be A-moved, maybe to the middle of the map, just chasing down his attack, basically. But having the ability to identify this is no longer scary is really big. Whereas if we watch EMC2's camera, he does go back there to build some probes. Let's see how quick he explodes into his next decision. So he's building some more pylons to repower the front. He's building another Immortal. He keeps looking at the front, so you can see the nerves here. He's worried. He's worried. If you're worried, pull your units back inside. Pull them back inside, but you've got to actually focus on that. We're warping in Zealots. He's sending a Zealot scout out. He's sending an Observer scout out. That's good. This is going to give him some more confidence, so I like that. If you're unsure, get some scouting. That's good. But we still haven't looked in the main base once. We haven't added gateways. And now he's saying, okay, let's go for that third base. But he hasn't added upgrades. He hasn't added more gateways. And even with a macro opening right now, because we didn't add the gateways earlier, we need more production. We need this Robo to probably be rallied to one of our Immortals at this point, because these Immortals keep getting left behind. And this is okay. We've got a Zealot kind of scouting. We're seeing, oh, he doesn't really have workers on his third. This should tell you you're ahead as the Protoss player, because you know he's only on at most two bases of workers. You've got 2 bases of workers and Protoss units, which are usually better than theirs. So unless he surprises with mutas or something, you're probably in a good spot. What we actually know as the map hacking observer is this 2/2 upgrades, which is actually quite scary since we're just starting +1. But we've got charge, and we're building shield batteries and cannons. This is like really random. So we're still missing those gateways, and finally that gateway explosion happens. And I would say the #1 thing that I see as a problem right through to the top of Diamond with Protoss players is they actually just, they're not organized with when they add these gateways down. So you want to kind of remember a sort of flow to yourself, guys. Maybe you go first gateway, tech structure, 2 more gateways, so you're at 3 gates and a tech structure. And then you go, okay, Twilight and Forge is next. Then 4 more gateways, or 5 more gateways to go up to 7 or 8 gates. And then the Templar Archives. And you kind of have this order, and you always stick to that order. And if you always stick to a certain order, you'll get better at remembering it and never forgetting anything. But you've got to kind of be strict on yourself. So right now we see all these cannons and shield batteries going up. This is a really bad investment because it's static defense, and static defense is really, really bad. It's not the worst thing in the world, and it helps a lot in the lower levels especially. The thing is, it doesn't move. So you could invest in a cannon and shield battery here, a cannon and shield battery here, a few cannons and a shield battery here, and if they attack your natural, you know, all of this investment really isn't worthwhile. So it's always better, rather than focusing on static defense. If you build 1 cannon and 1 shield battery here, I'd be okay with it. But I'd be more focused around getting the gateways up early, about getting maybe a few more observers or scouts out to see what's going on the map. Maybe just gearing up for a big push and taking control. Especially with Protoss players, we see this issue all the time where they defend and they're afraid, and then they just sit defensive, and and I don't think StarCraft's fun if you're just turtling all game. I talk to a ton of players, and usually the ones who are most distraught or angry in a matchup or feel like their opponent's race is imbalanced are the ones who sit back and just defend and never move out. Protoss is a race which people complain about this all the time. They say, I as a Protoss player can't get on the map. It sucks. I've got to sit behind my wall. I've got to turtle all game long. Look at how Need plays Protoss versus Zerg. I have to do that. And that's not the case at all. You're not playing the best Zergs in the world. What I want people to think about as Protoss players is you want to envision, defend up to a certain point, and then move out and take control of the match. Move out onto the map and engage them. Because it is so hard to do defensive micro, and we're going to see EMC2 lose a ton of units here to these corrosive files, getting trapped behind their own buildings. Whereas out in the open, this would have just been a crushing engagement, especially if EMC2 had invested in a few more charge lots and actually engaged in the open. There's even a Psystorm in the back there, which didn't get cast. But we see here both armies trading out, and that was actually way better for Magno. But if EMC2 was the one who was out on the map, taking that fight in the open, being assertive, and basically just saying, I only need to focus on 2 things. #1, A, move my army. #2, cast Psystorm. suddenly you're like, oh, this is actually really easy. Defending though, sitting on the back foot, not seeing armies till they're running in on your base, it's one of the hardest things in StarCraft. So always try to just say, all right, I'll defend and choose a point where you're going to go and push. For me, remember, I was saying I'm going to do a big Adept Sentry Immortal push. That's a good one. That's a really nice one. I love that one. Maybe you want to do Immortal Archon Charge. Even if you want to go to Psystorm and play like a really sort of macro style like EMC2 is doing here, say, all right, 4 High Templar, getting energy for Storm, get up 4 or 5 Immortals or maybe 6 Immortals, add some Archons, and then just basically have 10 Gateways, a Warp Prism, and just warp in a ton of Zealots and just go and start pushing into my opponent. And you'll find it's much easier to set up your engagements and so on. So anyway, guys, this game's going to drag on and go for a while. There's not too many points from there that relate to the situation. It'll be back and forth and that sort of stuff, but we wanted to kind of go over that and have a bit of analysis, because I feel like that applies to a lot of Protoss players. And I was thinking about it earlier today, where I was like, a lot of Protoss players just don't move out and take control of the map, man. They just never do it. It's really tough. So we do have one more Protoss replay before we move into the other ones, guys. Let's